Hey guys, Scott Patton here, and I got my top 5 picks for January for you guys. You know, probably January and February, a lot of these are going to be a whole lot alike, and some of the December baits are going to kind of taper into fit or January baits. But it's cold water, and these are just the baits that catch fish when the water temperature drops below 50 degrees. And so I've got 5 that I had to go through that I picked that I've got confidence in that I can go out and catch fish on pretty much anywhere, and one may be better than another due to weather or water conditions like that. So, but anyways, these are five baits that you'll definitely want to have with you when you go fishing in January. And so let's get started. I'm gonna, of course, start off with a jerkbait. I've always been a big jerkbait fan. I use mostly all Lucky Craft jerkbaits. I love them. I have for years. I've probably been using these things for probably 20 years. But this is a Pro Blue, an excellent color, and probably one of my other favorite colors is going to be Chartreuse Shad. I probably have caught more fish on this color jerkbait than any other color in more different lakes than say if I was just fishing one lake all the time. But I've gone everywhere and caught fish on this Chartreuse Shad. And both of these jerkbaits are great in clear water. If the water's kind of stained and stuff like that, guys, a jerkbait's not going to be the pick that you want to go with. You're probably going to go one of these other lures. But if you got fairly clear water conditions and you got bluff walls, long tapering points, it depends on the makeup of the lake you're fishing. These baits right here will catch fish for you. Okay, I would normally throw them on 10-pound test line. I will go all the way up to 14-pound test if I feel like I need to, if I'm catching some really giant bass. A lot of times you go in between that and use a 12-pound fluorocarbon. I use cigar line all the time. And I'm throwing these on a 6'8" or 6'10" rod. Again, I'm throwing those on a shorter rod because it's easier for me to take that bait and jerk straight down with it while I'm working it versus out to the side where you may have to do that with a 7-foot rod. So keep that in mind, you guys. If your arm's getting tired, a lot of times because you're using too long of a rod and you're jerking it sideways that way, it's harder on the elbow. If you get one where you can jerk it straight down, I'm telling you, it's less stress in your forearm and your elbow, and you'll be able to fish that bait longer. And if you're not hurting, then you're going to be able to fish it more effectively because you're going to stay in tune with what the bait's doing. A lot of times you want to kind of experiment with the retrieve on these. Sometimes it's a continuous retrieve, so kind of fast, sometimes kind of a little bit slower. There's times you may want to jerk it twice, pause, 3 times, pause. That's one thing you're going to have to kind of figure out what kind of mood the fish are in. But usually I let the fish tell you what they want. So don't go out there and just think you're going to throw this bait one way, one retrieve, and it's going to be effective, because a lot of times you may not be getting your bites because you're not fishing it the way the fish want it. So experiment with your retrieve on these, and keep these things tied on, because I'm telling you what, it's a great January bait month. A great January bait for the month of January, and it's great for largemouth and smallmouth, which a lot of you guys may be doing some trips where you're going to focus on smallmouth. Some of the lakes you may go to, some of these lakes in Tennessee, Dale Hollow, anywhere in this mid part of the country, you can catch some giant smallmouths in January and February around these lakes here in Tennessee. But anyways, jerkbait to me is my number 1 pick, you guys. And then probably my second pick is going to be, the vibrating baits. This is a Lucky Craft LV 500. Like I told you before, I always love these LV 500s. I've caught over 100 fish before on these things. I've used them anywhere from here to Okeechobee, all the way to New York. It don't matter. This bait will catch fish. The difference with this vibrating bait versus some of the other vibrating baits is this one here seems a little bit heavier, so it's really good this time of year. You can keep it a little bit deeper, closer to the bottom if you want to bounce it off the bottom like that, or you can throw it out there, and I tell you, you can work this thing like a jig. You can pull it up, let it fall, pull it up, let it fall. This is really great on lakes that's got pea gravel banks and stuff like that, pea gravel points and stuff like that. Like a lot of the Tennessee River lakes, Gunnersville, Kentucky Lake, Pickwick, they're all really good. They got good pea gravel banks, and this bait is really good when you're hopping that thing along there, catch some giants like that. These long tapering points that lead way back into the midsection of the creeks. Another great place to throw this. And I usually would throw this on a 7-foot, about a medium heavy rod. I don't want it to be too light, and I don't want it to be too heavy, because I want to be able to still stay in tune with my bait, and I want to be able to throw it out there and use, you know, probably 15-pound test fluorocarbons, what I use almost all the time. There's times I will go to 17. You can even go to 20 if you're trying to keep it in real shallow water. If you got a good warmer trend, you can throw this thing up in, you know, 2 foot of water, and the heavier line, it will let you be able to fish it a little bit slower if that's what you need to do. So the LV500, the vibrating bait, is going to be my number 2 pick. You know, and as far as colors, guys, you don't want to just use, you know, red's excellent this time of year, but I always keep a shad one tied on too, because, you know, especially if you get some really clear water, or maybe the water isn't real cold just yet. It could be, you know, 55, 60 degrees, depending on what part of the country you're in. And a lot of bass will still be feeding on the shad. So you got to kind of experiment with that too. But if I'm going to have to tie on two of these, the red and the shad pattern is going to be the ones I go with, you guys, okay? All right, guys, and it's moving along. We're going to go to number 3. Number 3 is going to be a crankbait. You know, when the water's cold, you know, I throw a lot of flat-sided crankbaits. I just seem like I catch more fish on them. This right here is a Lucky Craft Kelly J. It's a really good crankbait. Some of these colors they have quit making. I've got some of these, but they've also got, you know, I think, pretty sure the red one. This copper or chartreuse perch is a real good color. I'm pretty sure they're still selling that. I almost know you can get that on Tackle Warehouse and some of your other tackle stores out there. You can just look online. But these two are probably my 2 favorite. You know, the red, again, like I say, in the cold water, the reds are always good. The chartreuse or copper perch is a good all-around color. I don't know, you know, it just catches fish. Another one that goes along with it is just the all right, another good color, you guys, is going to be in the root beer color. These two right here is just, they both catch fish. This is great in clear water. You got some stained water, you can go with the one with a little bit more chartreuse in it. Another one I've done real good on, if you can find these around, this is called the Disco, I believe this is called. And you can see the color pattern in that thing. I have caught so many fish on this thing, especially when the water's, say, below 50 degrees. I crank that thing real slow, even, you know, around 55 degrees. This thing is really good to throw around chunk rock banks and gravel points and stuff like that. I'll throw it most of the time on 15-pound test line. I'll crank these things usually real slow, and I'm trying to find any kind of stump, scatter stump and stuff like that on these rocky banks to fish this thing. You want to bounce that thing off from the stump, and after you do, you pause it. You can see I've got a little bit of weight on this. That is just some stick-on lead tape. That enables me to crank it, hit the stump, let it bounce off, and then I'll pause it, and it'll just sit there. It won't float away from the stump. So if the fish are cold and they're not wanting to move much, if that fish is sitting by a stump and I hit that stump, hit this bait into the stump, it bounces off. That fish is sitting there, and that bait don't move. It gives him that extra 2 or 3 seconds to react and eat that thing. So adding some weight to your crankbaits this time of year, and if you look on a lot of these, I've got weight on almost all of them. See, guys, that's what I'm doing, and it really helps to catch a few more fish. That a lot of guys, you can go behind guys that may be fishing in the same areas, and if their baits, or if they're moving them baits too fast, with that water temperature around that 50-degree mark, them fish are really cold, and doing something like this can actually add, you catch some giants doing this. I've done it so many times, early in January and even February. This is going to be another good bait then too, guys. But anyways, for my number 3 pick in January is going to be my flat-sided crankbaits. Now, one crankbait I can't leave out, you guys, is, this time of year, is going to be Rapala's DT6, and usually I'm throwing these in root beer, or crawfish patterns. This bait right here, just something you gotta have, you guys. It's a wintertime bait when the water's cold. I've won a lot of tournaments and stuff with this thing over the years. Me and my son won a big tournament on Del Hollow several years ago. It was a 2-day tournament. I think we had big bass both days, and we caught all of our fish in one ditch in back of a creek. And we caught every single one of them fishing this bait just as slow as you could crank it in that ditch. And I forget what we weighed. I think in 2 days we had over 40 pounds of fish. But It's unbelievable. All those fish that were stacked up in that ditch, all you do is throw that thing in there, crank it as slow as you crank it, and they would just eat it. We never moved in that one spot for 2 days, and that bait won that tournament for us. And but anyways, you know, like I said, you know, the Rapala DT6, something you want to have tied on to, you guys. Okay. So another bait that I'm gonna go with, and I love fishing this bait. You know, if the bite's really slow, a lot of times, or if you're fishing a lake that's got bluff walls and stuff like that on, I love fishing this little 3/8 ball jig. It's more of a micro jig, a real small finesse jig. I love this bait this time of year. You know, I haven't trimmed that weed guard in there. I usually trim that weed guard a little bit. I rigged this one up. That's a dark green pumpkin with a green pumpkin trailer, good natural color. I throw this usually on about 12-pound test line, maybe 10 fluorocarbon, and I'm going to throw it up on, you know, chunk rock banks in bluff walls, and I was going to throw it and let that thing fall all the way down that bank, just working it real slow, letting it fall. And a lot of times, you know, if you're fishing a lake that's, you know, got smallmouth or spots on it, and of course the largemouth will really eat this thing up real good too. So I don't care what species you're fishing for in January, this little jig will catch fish for you guys. Okay, so don't forget to have that tied on. And like I said, it's a 3/8. That's a good neutral color. Sometimes you won't go to 1/4 ounce. I usually keep these in 1/4 and 3/8 for sure for my wintertime fishing, and just fish it real slow. Like I said, just walk it down those bluff walls, drag it on those steeper gravel banks and stuff and like that. You know, you want about a 45-degree bank, but you want to work that bank down through there and work it real slow, and you'll catch some big fish with that. You know, that's one thing about January, guys. In any of these baits, you can catch you a giant. January is a really good time to catch big fish. You may not go out there and catch 20, 25 fish in a day, but it's a great time to catch you a giant. And you know, you don't have to be throwing a giant bait this time of year to catch those big fish, because their you know, the water temperature is cold, they're cold-blooded, the metabolism's real slow, so a lot of times these smaller baits will catch big fish for you. There's been many a times I've gone out there and catch a couple 7-pounders back to back on this smaller jig. So in any of these baits, you know, there's some more, they're not gigantic baits, and I don't use any real big baits normally in January in most parts of the country. Okay, so number 4, you guys, is my little ball jig. Fantastic little bait, dark green pumpkin, normally what I'll throw, so make sure you got that tied on too. Now we're going to go to the last bait, and it's something that, you know, for years, ever since it came out with, you know, you've got to have it tied on in the winter time. And of course, and I've already talked about this is another duplicate bait from last month, is a rig. You know, you're just going to be missing out if you don't have this thing tied on all winter long. So, you know, have this bait tied on, fish it, you know, back in the creeks on some, you know, shallow flats and stuff like that, where it's coming off on a bluff wall, back in the creeks to the mouth of the creeks on the main lakes and stuff like that. But just cast this thing out. You want to use a heavy rod, about 7.5-foot rod, flipping sticks normally while I throw it on. I'll throw it on most of the time on 20 or 25-pound tests. Fluorocarbon, you can throw it on, say, 50-pound braid. It's your choice. You got to experiment and see what works for you. But guys, number 5, don't go fishing without this thing, okay? Because it's going to catch fish for you, and it's going to catch some big ones for you. I've only got 3 baits rigged up on this because, you know, I live in Tennessee, and in Tennessee we're going to have 3 of them. Now you're fishing, you know, like in Kentucky and some other states, you can have five hooks on them. You got to check your state's regulations and make sure you're fishing what they allow in your state, because you don't get pulled over, and which I haven't really talked to anybody that's had any trouble with that. But just play it safe, you guys, and find out what your state regulations are, and go with either 3 hooks, 5 hooks, and have this thing tied on, because you're going to catch fish on this thing for sure. You guys, I really appreciate it. You know, today is December 31st. It's been a good year for me. I'm looking forward to 2023, and I appreciate all you guys follow along, all you guys that have come down and fish with me on guide trips here on Okeechobee or on Lake Chickamauga. You know, I'm going to be fishing the Toyota Series next year. I'm going to go to the Northern Divisions. I'm going to fish the Toyota Series on Chickamauga. I'm just really excited about that tournament. It's going to be about mid-May. It's going to be a spawning tournament. There'll be some post-spawn fish there, so I'm excited to see what happens on that tournament there. And I'm just excited to fish my tournaments. And but anyways, you guys, Happy New Year to you. Please subscribe, follow along, leave a comment. Let me know if you've been catching any big fish here lately. And we'll catch you here on the next one next video later on, you guys. And like I said, Happy New Year to you.